briefly looking at two different things initially. First is the profile of Indian managers, and second will be looking at the profile of or socio-economic milieu of Indian workers as such. Now, first thing first, when we look at the profile of Indian managers, I think we need to look at it from past as well. That is, as to what was the position during the period you know, of 80s and 90s, and how it changed over a period of time. There are few studies that has been conducted by various individuals and agencies, and what we find that the initial studies that was being done, in which there are landmark studies by Sayedan and Monappa as well, and it is quoted in the book of personnel management that you may read it from. What we find that they could gather, or the study that was conducted under the aegis of AIMA, that is All India Management Association, basically these studies show that Indian managers were mostly drawn during the period of 80s from urban and semi-urban background. That is the first fact. The second fact is that they mostly belong to the business families or family of the executives, or they belong to the family of civil servants. Just a minute, please. Just hold on for a second. Right. So that was the background. Then what we find that most of these managers fell in the age group of 35 to 60 years. This was there. We found that when we look at the educational qualification of these managers, we find that most of them were graduates. There was a small percentage, around 10 to 12% were postgraduates, but there were 2% of managers who were either high school or not even high school qualifications. We further find that these managers, around 15% of them acquired some kind of a diploma in professional management while in service. They were mostly drawn from well-known institutions in India. That was the Madras University, Calcutta University, and in that as well, they have specific colleges, or Mumbai University, where they talk about Arts College Mumbai. They talk about, the well-known college of Calcutta University that is there, or they came from Loyola College of Madras, now known as Chennai. So that was the position. Some later studies also found that these people were drawn from universities like Allahabad. But when we go further, we find that these managers were married with a planned family of 2 children. They were members of more than one clubs, and they always were working for more than one profession or more than one functional areas in the organization, and they were found to be highly satisfied as per Sayyidan and Munappa. This was the profile of the Indian managers of the 80s and early 90s. But as we progress, there are a study by Singh and others. It found out that the profile of Indian managers changed drastically during the period of 90s with professionalization, with springing up of institutions all over, the professional institutions. And therefore, what we notice that these managers, first of all, their age group, they became manager between the age group of 35 to 50 years. It was taking longer time earlier for them to become managers, but now that time period got reduced. The second thing that happened is that these managers were no longer drawn from public school background, as was the case earlier. They started coming from other schools as well. Although predominantly, still those managers were from the English-speaking background. The third thing that happened was that now people were also drawn from rural areas as well, because the urban areas remained predominant, but it was the share of rural areas also started coming up. The third thing that was noticed that as per the family background of these people, earlier we found that they were mostly drawn from the executive family of the executives, family of the civil servants, or from business families. Now they were also drawn from non-business families and non-professional or civil service background people. It was also found that earlier the parents of these managers were educated or semi-educated, but now we find that there were a large number of managers whose parents were uneducated as well. When we go further, we find that these managers acquired postgraduate qualifications in the area of management, in the area of law, and in the area of engineering and technology to become managers in the organizations. We further find that these managers were no longer having mobility within the functional area. So interfunctional mobility got stopped with the professionalization. If there was any mobility, that was intra-functional mobility was there, but interfunctional mobility that was seen earlier became absent. The third thing that happened, it was further noticed that on the satisfaction scale, earlier that Sayyidan and Munappa found on a 4-point scale, he found that were 3.6% people. There were some people still trying to join when they know that 5 minutes is the time. Right. Hello.
I think because of new link that.
No, not new link as such. That is not an excuse. Right. Time is time. It gets disturbed all the time poking. Now what we find that the satisfaction level which was seen to be above 3.5 on a 4-point scale that was GOGed earlier got reduced a bit. It was no longer 3.5, it was much less than 3.5 as far as the satisfaction is concerned. We further find that earlier most managers were, I said, drawn from well-known universities, but now it is noticed that the monopoly of well-known universities and colleges no longer existed. They were also drawn from lesser known institutions and other institutions. So an all India character could be noticed as far as these managers are concerned, as far as their educational background is concerned. So what we find that this change is quite evident. Earlier, there was one thing that was noticed, that very few managers were from the female gender, but now managers were also seen to be from other genders, so that gender differences that existed was no longer there. These changes, if you could see, has got a bearing on the working of the institution. It has got bearing on the HR strategy of the organizations as well, right? Now, I'd suggest that please go through the book by Sayyidan and Monappa. I think it is chapter 2, which talks about profile of Indian managers. You go through the new edition so that you get the latest studies as well, right? Please go through that if you can. Now,
Sir, excuse me, sir.
yes.
Sir, can you please repeat interfunctional mobility? What do you mean by that? I didn't get it.
Right. See, earlier, an operation manager was also looking after the HR function sometimes, right?
Yes, sir.
Or a marketing manager was also looking after the HR function or finance function. But with the passage of time, as I said, during the 90s, there was intra-functional mobility, that is mobility within the function. So a finance manager would be moving within the finance area. He would be taking one or the other responsibilities within the finance area. He would no longer be moving into other functional areas, right? That is the mobility I'm talking about. A
Okay,
strict specialization started coming into fold, right?
yes, sir.
Okay. Now, if you look at the socio-economic milieu of Indian workers, these two can be read from Sayyidan and Monappa, because I have read it from there only. What we find that there were some studies in the beginning, that is by some individuals called Mithu Chidambaram and others. They found that most Indian workers were coming from lower strata of society, and among those lower strata of society, they were coming from, in the Varna system, from the fourth Varna that is there. They found that they moved from rural areas to urban areas for finding a job, as rural areas were unable to support them because of adverse land-man ratio. As the population increased, the land-man ratio got reversed, and people were moving from their landed background or working background, that is agricultural background, to work in the industry to have extra income to support their families. It was also found that most workers were coming from the areas of Rajasthan. They were coming from the areas like Bihar, They were coming from the areas like eastern UP, right, in the North India. And in the southern India, they were mostly coming from Chennai or area, they were coming from the area called Tamil Nadu as a whole, but very few would be coming from the areas like Kerala or areas like the southern states which were there. In the western India, it would notice that majority of these workers were coming from Maharashtra, right? Majority of them were coming from Maharashtra, very few from the areas of Gujarat, because that was the position. But further studies show that the background of these people, saying that they were mostly from lower strata of society, was not seen. They were not coming from the fourth strata of society everywhere. For example, a study was conducted in the areas of Pune and in and around Pune, and it was noticed that the workers who were working in that particular area were mostly coming from the second world of society. They were mostly were from upper caste background rather than lower caste background. That was one thing which was noticed. Second thing that was noticed was that not all workers were coming from rural areas. A large number of workers were also coming from semi-urban areas, which was closer to the cities. The third thing that was noticed about these workers were that they were not all from agricultural background, as was seen in the areas of Rajasthan or Bihar or eastern UP. They were also coming from other backgrounds other than agriculture which was there. There was a gentleman, a British scholar called Slotkins, Slotkins. Slotkins labeled a charge that most Indian workers are green hands. Now, this charge could be denied based on the studies that was conducted in the areas of Maharashtra or in the areas of southern India, that they were not coming from agricultural background, because these workers, though found to be mostly uneducated or semi-educated, they could, more than 50% of them could not even sign. They have got to put their thumb impressions in the beginning. But mobility was there towards getting education. Therefore, literacy level increased, and with that, they at least could sign the registers in whatever manner, be that in the in vernacular language rather than English or any other language which was there. It was further found out that these workers used to be absent from the jobs quite often. And this phenomena did not change even to the recent day. Now, but there is a reason that could be found out for this absenteeism in the workers that could be noticed. These workers, as we said, were following strictly the Indian customs. India being a country of more than 365 festivals a year, and there are variations that once we have festival, there are certain festivals with a change of name in different regions. For example, recently we had Makar Sankranti. We also find that there was a festival called Pongal around the same date. There was festival called Lohri in the areas of Punjab. So we find that there are a large number of festivals which is being celebrated, and these workers would move to their native places to celebrate that with the families. And since not many number of leaves are available, they would just go to their native places, and therefore they are absent. Further, we have got to look at the definition of absenteeism as well, because absenteeism as such is not that you have absconded from the work. Absenteeism is when you abstain from work without giving prior notice to the organization. And these workers, being semi-literate, were not aware of these things, since even communication was not available at that point of time. They were not having mobile phones or telephones. Therefore, informing the organization was very, very difficult. But this phenomena has started changing, that absenteeism has started reducing in the industries as such. We further find that these workers were not well adjusted. It is said that these workers were maladjusted as far as their industry life is concerned. There is a justification that could be found by Sinha and others in their study. They found out that number one, these workers, mostly coming from semi-urban areas or coming from rural areas, they were used to an open field lifestyle, which was not available in the industrial towns or industrial centers. We further found that heat was one of the reasons, because they were used to living and sleeping outside their huts or houses, but in the cities they were confined to small rooms that they were provided at the industry, and there was heat was creating a problem for them, and therefore they were slightly maladjusted. We further find that due to caste system that was prevalent, the caste system also prevailed at the workplace that was there, and therefore some kind of maladjustment was seen as far as these workers are concerned. But with the passage of time, with an increase in educational levels, these things vanished. We further find that in terms of education, the workers felt that if they acquire education, they will move from lower strata of their workforce to the middle or upper strata of the workforce, and may become work supervisors if they get education, because that is what they noticed, and they were ready to acquire education, or at least make their children get educated, so that they do not end up working in the industries as workers. We further find that these workers, as we said, did not consider, they usually consider their work as permanent, and therefore they were going off as and when they want. But now we find that that mobility was no longer there. We find that workers did not consider that as a permanent. If they were leaving or getting absent, they may be separated from the job, and therefore now they were more conscious. We further find that these workers earlier were recruited with the word of mouth, or they were recruited by getting information on local radios or vernacular press. Now we find that these workers were recruited not through the local word of mouth, but they would be recruited through proper means by registration in the local exchanges that was established, or through contractors that they were established. We further find that these workers who were coming, whose income used to be very, very low, was found to be improving in terms of income as the industrial growth started picking up in India. So what we find that the management of these workers also changed over a period of time as the characteristics or socio-economic milieu of these workers changed over a period of time. If you have any question, please feel free to ask before I move to another topic.
So this all happened during the period of 90s, no?
I'm talking about these two periods up to 90s and period thereafter. The nature has changed later on. Now that position of maladjustment or rural background does not exist. Right.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay. Let us look at another topic, which is called job analysis. Right. Now, job analysis, there are three terms that is seen on your screen. First term is called job analysis. Now, if you see the job analysis is the procedure for determining the duties and skill requirements of a job and the kind of person who should be hired for it. There are three things that you should underline. It is determining the duties, number one, and skill requirements, number two. That skill requirement of a particular job and the kind of person who should be hired for it as a third thing. Who should be hired, what skill they must have, and what duties they have got to perform. This is what we define as job analysis. There is another term listed called job description. Now, job description is a list of job duties, responsibilities, reporting relationships, working conditions, and supervisory responsibilities. It is a product of job analysis. Job description is a product of job analysis. Once job analysis is being done, we write down it on a piece of paper. That is what we call as job description, which includes duties, responsibilities, reporting relationships, working conditions, and supervisory responsibilities. Right. There is a third term that is listed, that is job specification. It is a list of jobs' human requirements. The third element, kind of person that is required, that is listed in the job analysis. Therefore, we say it is human requirements. That is the requisite education the person should have, the job holder should have, the skill that job holder should have, the personality trait or personality type that they must have, and it is another product of job analysis that is being done. So first of all, we have to do job analysis in order to get job description and job specification, which is going to be used. What are different types of information that has to be collected? We have to collect information about work activities. We have got to collect information about human behavior. We have got to collect information about machines, tools, equipment, and work aids that is going to be used for performing the job. There has to be performance standards fixed over a period of time as to how much time it is going to take, and what should be the work standard. Then job context is also to be seen. Is the job final, not going to be forming part of any other job? Or if it is forming, then part of any other job, what is that job? For example, if you are manufacturing a steering wheel, then steering wheel is a product which is going to form part of a vehicle, right? So when it has to be supplied to the assembly unit where assembly of these vehicle is being done. So that is where job context comes up. Then we also have got to look at data about human requirements which are there. That is the type of education, skill, etc. We also find that we have got to determine in the beginning where are we going to use the job analysis data, where it can be used from the HR point of view. So organization would be using these data that we generate through job analysis for the purpose of recruitment and selection. They are going to use it for fixation of compensation. A part is going to be played by the job analysis data, not all. We also have got to have performance standards. So it is going to be used for performance appraisal of the employee, because what is the job, what are different components of that job. Therefore, what are the key responsibility area that will be used as far as performance appraisal is concerned. That is also going to be used for the training purpose. The training department is going to use this data in a large ways. We also find that there will be certain jobs which will be unassigned duties that is there. So those unassigned duties can also be found out through the job analysis. And the reservations that is there in the job, which we call in a finer term as equal employment opportunities. So reservations as BC or OBC, or we have reservations for SC/ST, we have reservations for, economically weaker sections of society. We have got handicap or, disabled people, which we call by a different name now. So we find that our reservations for women was there in the beginning. Everything formed part of an equal employment opportunity compliance which has to be there. So differently abled people will also be included. As we said, the term handicap is no longer being used. What we find that there are 6 different steps that is going to be followed for job analysis. The first step would be to decide how the organizations will use this information that we have listed. For what are the different purposes, one or more than one. The second step would be review relevant background informations. This background information is the jobs background, industry's background, which is there. The third step would be selecting representative positions, because for all jobs, you cannot have the job analysis. Everything cannot be analyzed. So you'll be looking at the key jobs. Therefore, representative positions have got to be identified, that is going to be analyzed. Fourth step would be actually analyzing that job, the representative positions that we have chosen. Fifth step would be to verify the analysis information. Information that you have collected has got to be verified for its completeness, verified for extreme views, extreme notings that has been done. And the sixth step would be develop a job description and job specification, the 2 terms that we have seen in the first slide. There are various things with which we need to compare. For example, why should we do a job analysis? Isn't that this data can be gathered from other sources? For example, we looked at the organizational chart yesterday. An organizational chart shows the organization-wide distribution of work with title of each position that we saw and interacting lines that shows who reports to and communicates with whom. It does not show the nature of the job. It does not show the machines and tools that is going to be used. It does not show in terms of human requirements. Excuse me for a while, please. Excuse me for a while. There is somebody. Sorry, Dave. Now, what we find that this organizational chart does not really provide all kinds of data that is being generated through the job analysis. Therefore, organizational chart is not an alternate to this process, right? Another thing that we know is called process chart, a workflow chart that shows the flow of inputs to and output from a particular job. This also does not really show the nature of job. It does not show the human requirements and so on and so forth. This process chart is normally seen outside an organization. It shows what is the stage, or we have got Gantt charts that is being displayed as to what is the position of the job, which stage it is in, and when it is going to be completed. For example, this is the slide showing the process chart for analyzing a job workflow. So it only shows the workflow. It does not show the other requirements which are there. What are different methods of collecting job information, job analysis information? The first method, or one of the most popular methods, is called interview method. Are you listening?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The source of information for an interview would be individual employee or groups of employees. It can also be supervisor of the employees who are well versed with the job, therefore supervisors with knowledge of the jobs. There can be supervisor who does not have full knowledge of the job. Not those supervisors will be considered. That will be the source of information as far as these are the persons who will be interviewed. The advantage of interview is that it is quick and direct way to find overlooked information, right? But disadvantage is that if these employees are not providing right kind of data, the information will be distorted information. This interviews can be of two types. There can be structured interview with the help of a checklist, or there can be unstructured interview which can be there. But the data has to be noted very, very carefully so that we collect the relevant kind of data through an interviewer. So it is dependent on the interviewer as to how they are doing it. And therefore, what we find that there is a guideline that is being provided for the interview. That is the job analyst, as we call them, and supervisor should work together to identify workers who know the job best. That is the first thing. Second thing would be that once you are interviewing, the interviewer and interviewee should have good rapport. So that establishment of rapport with the interviewee is very, very important. Further, we will also say that as far as possible, follow a structured guide or checklist, one that lists open-ended questions as well as close-ended questions. The open-ended questions will provide a space for, writing the views of these people, because close-ended questions are sometimes loaded questions. Then we find that the question should be asked to the workers to list his or her duties in order of importance and frequency of occurrence which is there. And after completing, one has to review and verify the data that has been generated. So that is the guidelines for an interview. Then we find that there is a second method called questionnaire method. A questionnaire, as we all know, is called an instrument as well. Therefore, we sometimes call it an instrument method of collecting data. This questionnaire is an instrument. The information source for a questionnaire again would be the employees who will fill out these questionnaire to describe their job-related duties and responsibilities, right? And the questionnaire format can be structured checklist. It can be open-ended questions which are there, but there would be no loaded questions or misleading questions or directing questions which should be there. The disadvantage of questionnaire method is that, advantage is that it is quick and efficient, and large number of employees can be distributed these questionnaire to fill out details. But disadvantage is that preparation of questionnaire is a tedious process. Testing of questionnaire is a tedious process. Validation of questionnaire is a tedious process. And once you have developed it with all this method, it becomes an expensive proposition in terms of time that it consumes, and the testing of these questionnaire takes a long time, and result may not be accurate instantly. It has to be tested over a period of time, maybe a year or two or more, and continuously validated. The third method is called an observation method. An observation method is where an expert would be observing and noting the physical activity of employees as they go about doing it. Now, if you look at this definition, where we're saying observing and noting the physical activities of employee as they go about noting, that means if mental activities are involved, that mental activities cannot be noted, and observation will not be a foolproof method for all kinds of jobs that is in question. The advantage of this observation method is that it provides first-hand information and reduces distortion to a large extent. But disadvantage is it is time-consuming, and it is very difficult to capture entire job cycle, and it is of very little use, as we said, if job involves mental activity that is there. Fourth method is diary or logs, but this method can only be used for the job works which is being done. Information source is workers keep a chronological diary or log of what they do and the time is spent on each jobs. Advantage of log or diary system is that it produces a more complete picture of the job, and employee participation is also there. But disadvantage is that distortion of information may be seen in this particular method, and it depends upon employee to accurately recall their activities, as diaries would either be written or logs would either be written at the end of the day or at the end of the week that is there. And therefore, this method has to be used with some kind of caution. Then we also find that there are quantitative job analysis techniques. For example, the Americans use the position analysis questionnaire. We do not have, or they have got Department of Labor which uses it. But in India, we have got functional job analysis which is being found. It takes into account the extent to which instructions, reasoning, judgment, and mathematical and verbal ability are necessary for performing a task. So this is being followed in India, which we call as functional job analysis. The first two is only true for the American organizations which are there. Now, once you have done the job analysis, once you have collected the data, you have got to write down, and therefore writing is basically the job description. A job description would be a written statement of what the worker actually does, how he or she does it, and what is the job's working condition, right? So this will be the part of the job description. We will continue with it tomorrow. Thank you. But tomorrow we are going to use the old link and join class at 11:20. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.